Welcome. It's 5:30. If you have a device that makes noise, please, if you have a beeper, please see me after the meeting. But otherwise, I think we're fine. We're going to ask Representative Andrade to lead us in the invocation.
Dear God, our Father, creator of heaven and earth, we beseech you this evening for your will to be done, Lord. We pray that you bless this panel and those that come forward, Lord. We pray that you grant the three of us wisdom tonight and on into session, so that we may constantly be shining examples of your perfect Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I would like to welcome everyone to the meeting tonight of the Escambia County Legislative Delegation. All those addressing the committee, please make sure that you fill out or submit a appearance record form. If you want to appear, we have a schedule of people that called in beforehand, but you're welcome to speak. I believe we have plenty of time. We are fulfilling our obligation as a delegation to confirm an interlocal agreement between the city of Pensacola and Escambia County. And this action starts in the House as a local bill, does not start in the Senate. So at this point, I'm going to turn the meeting over to Representative Andrade to conduct the business.
Thank you, Senator. I appreciate it. We are here tonight on a request from the city of Pensacola and the Escambia County Commission to revise the statute relating to the Pensacola-Escambia Promotion and Development Commission. At this time, I'd like to just go straight into the public comment. I believe currently, I'm not sure if we're able to vote until we have our third member of our delegation here. So hopefully we will get here before the end of this 1 hour meeting. But at this time, I'd like to call Mr. Lewis Barrett Jr.
Good evening. My name is Louis Baer, and I am serving as board member on the PEDC. Some years ago, the legislature passed a statute. Should I start over? Some years ago, the legislature passed a statute establishing the Development Commission. Over the years, there's some parts of that that become obsolete. At one point, the Chamber of Commerce was responsible for economic development in the community. Several years ago, they decided that they prefer economic development to be spun off for different reasons. The main reason is because we operate in the sunshine, and they do certain things that they don't want in the sunshine. And we formed Florida West, and so part of this request, this new statute would be to replace Chamber of Commerce with the Economic Development arm recognized by the county and the city, Florida West. And the other issue, main issue in there, is to broaden the statute to allow people who have businesses or financial interest property in Escambia County, who are residents in the two-county area, to be able to serve on this board. Today, it's questionable whether or not I'm a legal member of that board, and that I don't vote in Escambia County, though I am a landowner and a business owner in the county. So in order to resolve that for the future, real request and also be part of the statute. And we appreciate your support on it, and we look forward to having the new statute passed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Baird. I would like to remind everyone in this room, and thank everyone in this room for showing up on time. This meeting was publicly noticed. The 3 members of this delegation all agreed to be here on time. I don't know where Representative Hill is. I look forward to finding out why he's late. But until then, we'll continue with speakers. Melissa Pino. And I'd also like to note that if we can keep it to a 3-minute time limit, I'll be keeping time up here. But just to keep this meeting moving along.
Thank you, Representative Andrade, Senator Broxson. I appreciate this time this evening to address y'all. And my husband Mike is going to be speaking after I do, and because his career is in workforce development, he can speak a lot better to the global aspect of what a lot of people feel is important with modernizing the language and the makeup of the PEDC to more accurately reflect the way business is done. And Mike can speak a lot better than that than I do, because he's on the road about 75% of the time to 50 different countries in the world. What I wanted to say a little bit to tonight is more on the local level, because that's more my kin. That's what I've been focusing on the last year. I haven't missed a BOCC meeting of any type since last March. Been very invested in watching our community grow, watching our BOCC hammer out some really tough decisions. And what I am here to respectfully ask this delegation is that you can help us as a community get past this incredibly divisive juncture of a very important function being economic development. It's so important, it's state mandated. And there's no question that there are questions about how best to go about this. Personally, I'm a big fan of ST, especially the second phase and the mentorship aspect of it. That's really interested in the workforce development aspect of it. But that project and the funding for it aside, and just speaking to the function of economic development, I watched the BOCC hammer out a lot of really tough discussions on it. Lots of times the same things, unfortunately, have gotten revisited over and over. It hasn't been easy, but they did come to a supermajority, actually, a 4-1 decision on asking you in good faith to represent them on these changes, as did, I believe, the city council vote was unanimous. This is sort of put the community through a ringer, though, what happens after the meetings. Everyone decides in good faith, there is a majority decision, and then the fun and games begin. And people would like to see some progress. People would like to see some moving on from this. And I think that people would also really like to hear your support and clarity that you're behind our elected representatives on a local level, because there's a lot of confusion on that note being sown. And so personally, for whatever my voice means in this, and it doesn't mean much, but I do believe that it's the sentiment of a lot of people in our community, I really hope that you will support this with full earnestness and help us get these necessary changes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is Mike Pino here?
And yes, I did do 148,000 miles there last year. I did 197 days a year. So, my name's Mike Pino. I live at 413 Southeast Publix Drive. I'm responsible for learning and development for a Fortune 500 company named Cognizant, which is one of the largest, fastest growing IT outsourcing services in the world. My responsibilities are 270,000 people in 50 countries in development. I'm here actually because there's a lot of opportunity to take us into the future. And I think that the conversations that are happening now are setting the groundwork for us to have these kinds of conversations. The conversations we could either talk, we could continue to have divisive politics, which aren't necessarily what we really need. But what I'd like to talk about is, in some ways, what it really takes to be global, what it really takes to drive things in a new direction is being, well, let's just say, moving away from provincial thinking. What I'm looking for is that in a lot of the conversations that have happened, that you represent that wisdom for us, and I'm hoping that you actually help bring us to that we're looking for. So thank you very much, Senator. Thank you very much, President.
Thank you very much. Is Barbara Mayle here?
Yes, I'm Barbara Mayle. I live in the city, 301100, Pensacola. And thank you so much for having this hearing and allowing me to speak today. Jim and I both are city residents, and we are both property owners, small property owners, nevertheless we are. Since this has come up, I do feel that when we have statutes and we have rules, they should be followed. I think that that's been a mistake that has happened, and you're trying to fix that. So I think moving forward, that that whatever the statute reads, whatever you decide that it's going to read, that whoever's on the PEDC just follows the statutes, and I think we'll all get along just fine. So thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much. Is Jim Mayle here? All right, we'll move on to Commissioner Doug Underhill.
Thank you, gentlemen. My name is Doug Underhill, and like you, I'm elected to represent the people. Like you, I'm a Republican, an advocate for small government, the believer that capitalism has raised more souls from poverty to prosperity than any other force in the history of commerce. I rise tonight to ask you to apply these principles that we preach so often to the matters before you. Every campaign season, we fawn over small business America, as well we should. We remind America that 64% of net new jobs are created by small businesses. In Escambia County, our small business community is indeed the backbone of our economy here. And yet the request that you have before you includes a provision to remove the Chamber of Commerce representing our small business communities from the decision-making of staffing the PEDC board. Escambia County simply cannot afford a PEDC devoid of the only men and women who have a history of creating and sustaining jobs here in Escambia County. We also all claim the mantle of fiscal conservatives. And I'm here to tell you that Escambia County cannot afford the PEDC, we cannot afford Florida West, and we cannot afford the constant parade of projects that ultimately do not live up to the hype and the expectations. I am struggling right now to pay our first responders in this county. We have a requirement of about $17 million a year to resurface the roads that we already have, not talking about new roads. $17 million requirement just to maintain what we already have, and we're only spending $5 million a year to do that because we don't have enough money to resurface all of our roads at an appropriate rate. We recently received a study last year, middle of last year, saying that we need to spend $9.3 million a year in maintenance and upgrades to our derelict bridges so that they don't become shut down, don't become non-functional. The PEDC costs this county over $500,000 a year, with nothing of value to show for it because we go from one project to the next, and so many of them that never come to fruition. But that cost is only a small portion because there's another $1.5 million in tax revenue that this county never sees because of subsidies handed out by this organization. And when I go and I look at the list, I'm somewhat surprised to see that Blue Spare Corporation is on that list of those receiving those subsidies, the owner of which is the chairman and current chairman of the board. Gentlemen, capitalism will only work if the playing field is level and fair, enabling each person to rise and fall on the merits of his own strength and weakness. There is no such thing as crony capitalism, a word that's used all too often in our society now, because cronyism and capitalism cannot coexist. Cronyism is, in fact, a toxin to capitalism. Your predecessors wisely understood that only an elector in Escambia County should hold sway over how we spend the people's money in this county. Gentlemen, if capitalism is in danger in America today, and if you may I take a few more moments of time. If capitalism is in danger today, it is not because the socialists are on the march. If capitalism is in danger today, it is not because the Democrats are attacking it. It can only be in danger because Republicans stop standing up for it. The PEDC, and indeed this entire cottage industry of taxpayer-funded incentives for business, is an affront to capitalism. So I ask you, gentlemen, to defend capitalism tonight, not only by refusing to accept what's been put in front of you, but offering legislation to eliminate the PEDC, get government back in the role of doing government, and let the private sector do what it does best, and that is create jobs. Thank you.
Thank you very much. City Councilwoman Sherry Myers.
Good afternoon, and thanks for having me. My name is Sherry Myers, and I represent District 2 in the city of Pensacola. I serve on the Pensacola City Council. And I am very happy that I am now the newest appointee to the PEDC, and I should have been here a long time ago. I represent a district uptown that is the economic engine of the city of Pensacola. We have in my district hundreds of small businesses and large businesses. I represent a district that has the largest taxpayer in the city, and that's Sacred Heart Health System. I have Cordova Mall, Simon Properties, Walmart. I could go on and on. Those are the big ones. But I represent a lot of small businesses. I have 5 or 6 large office complexes. And in those complexes are small businesses. And I represent a lot of locally owned small businesses. We also have hotels in my district. I'm concerned that we're not getting our fair share from the city. And that's one of the reasons I want to be on the PEDC, to make sure that we have the kind of economic development in this area that benefits everyone. So I asked to be on the PEDC, and I feel that this language is greatly improved over the language that currently exists. Now, I have had a few people contact me concerned that we allow people to be on the board who are not registered voters. I don't have a problem with that. The way this is structured, there is a lot of oversight on this board because you have 4 elected officials. In Escambia County, actually including Century, you have 5 elected officials who are registered voters in their municipalities. Plus, we are able to appoint 2 at-large members, and Florida West can appoint 2 members, leaders, who have to meet one of 3 criteria. And so their ability to appoint 2 people who, I would say, minority voters, I don't have a problem with that at all. It doesn't make sense for us to exclude people who can contribute so much and do contribute so much to Escambia County. So I fully support this. And I agree with some of the things that Commissioner Doug Underhill says. You know, I've been one of the most vocal critics on City Council regarding e-dates. I think I can credit myself with clearing up some of the lack of accountability regarding e-dates that we've given out in the city. Our enterprise zone in the city of Pensacola was a complete disaster. And so I have been very critical and a watchdog when it comes to us giving subsidies to private businesses. So, having said that, I feel that we have a good statute here. I think that it should be approved, and I think there can be some changes in how we conduct business, and so I think that we have very good and capable people on the board who are ready to do that. So I ask you for your indulgence and support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Council. Thank you, Councilwoman. And by way of explanation, for those of you following along, we're going slightly out of order. There were only 2 additional speaker forms filled out tonight, and they were both by elected officials. So I figured it would be a good idea to allow all elected officials to speak in order. So at this time, we call Commissioner Burgash.
Good evening, gentlemen. Commissioner Jeff Burgash, District 1 of Escambia County. First and foremost, I want to thank you for coming out and giving us the opportunity to speak. Representative Andrade, I appreciate you running this bill and carrying it. You know, Board of County Commissioners, we debated this, and we voted it forward. The PEDC, where I sit as a commissioner on the PEDC, we approved these changes unanimously. The City Council, that's my understanding, they approved it unanimously. So we understand your function, you're listening to us, our boards have spoken, and I just hope that you moving forward, just a couple of things that I'll take issue with. Economic development does work. It's all over the country. It brings results even here to Escambia County. Maybe Federal Credit Union, 7,000 jobs, going to 10,000 jobs, would not have happened without economic incentives. That is arguably probably one of the biggest impacts in this Pensacola area in the last 50 years, for the good. ST Aerospace, I've met those folks. I've been to Singapore at their headquarters. Tremendous project with a lot of potential. Running into a little bit of a shortfall, but when we get them here, which I believe we will, it will be because of the incentives that we provided, and those jobs will carry on for years and years and years. So I'm a big believer. I've owned small businesses, and I wouldn't have been able to do that without small business programs designed to help people, incentives. So to those who are naysayers about that, I would just say this. They do exist. Economic development is a real thing. It's an important thing of what we do. It's part of what we do here. It's good for the community. It brings in jobs, which in turn spins out taxes that help support our operations. So, you know, when you look at all 3 boards, there's one person who voted against it. Think about that. And I hope that you'll move this forward and listen to the majority who are dead right on this issue. Dead right, and we appreciate it. Because the language in there is dated. We don't do tourism anymore. The Council of 100 is gone. And to say that a gentleman that owns a massive, massive company in Escambia County that employs hundreds of people, that does hundreds of millions of dollars of business, to say that your big issue is you don't like him sitting on that board because he lives across the bridge, I just think that's ridiculous. I think that language is antiquated as well. And as one of the previous speakers said, there's plenty of oversight, and there will continue to be. So we appreciate you being here, and we hope that you move this forward in the legislature. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is Ms. Jacqueline Rogers here?
Good evening, Representative Andrade and Senator Broxton. Hopefully we're not changing the legislation just to accommodate one person. Hopefully we're looking past that because there will be people after Mr. Bear that will serve. And I do want to remind you that Mr. Bear does serve on the Florida West Board also. So he does have quite a bit of input in economic development. This was discussed, the last time it was discussed at the County Commission meeting, it was at a committee of the whole where public input is not allowed. So I also want to tell you that I did speak about it. I spoke at the last legislative delegation. I think we can find qualified residents to serve. But even if you do change this, I really think that the wording is too non-specific. It doesn't say what type of investment someone would have to have. Could they be from another state and have a presence here? There's so many different ways to be a principal of another principal of a business that's located here. could a foreign government person be on there? And you may say, well, they're never going to appoint someone. We have to look at future boards, but this is legislation that you set precedents for. So I hope you would look at that. I fundamentally believe that taxes generated in Escambia County should be decided by Escambia County citizens. I think that that's a fundamental principle there. Again, like I said, there's too few requirements in here. Also, I object to the wording where we're taking the chamber out of this. I know that before the chamber handled economic development, but I don't think the Florida West Board should be appointing the people that are overseeing them and contracting them. And I would like the chamber, we haven't heard from the chamber in an official capacity. I think that they would be representing, I'm a small business owner, they would be representing the needs of the small business owners to make sure that economic development is not competing with existing businesses. So I don't think that change should be in there. How many non-residents can be on the board? That's not specified. And can the non-resident be the chair who directs the meeting? So that's the other thing too. It's not a personal thing about one person. I respect what he has done, and I do think he has a voice in other places. We have to look at precedent when you're writing legislation. You haven't changed it since 1989. I don't think you're going to change it next year if something goes wrong. We celebrated the appointment of an Escambia person on the Triumph Board because we needed representation, but we say residency doesn't matter on this board. So I'm confused as a citizen. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. It is Mr. Derek Kosa here. I apologize. As an Andrade, I'd be your fan if I mispronounced your last name.
It's Carson, but I don't take it personally, man.
Thank you.
Good evening, Representative Andrade, Representative Hill, Senator Broxton. I came down here tonight to speak in opposition to a particular piece of the language in this proposed legislation, that being a change in residency requirements for membership on the PEDC. Currently, you have to be a resident elector of Escambia County to serve on the Pensacola-Escambia Development Commission. If this language were to go forward, anyone who is a resident or a property owner or a business owner of Escambia County, regardless of where they live in the world, I guess, could conceivably be on the PEDC. I believe in devolved government. I believe that we should make decisions for our communities at the lowest levels, whether that's the county or the city or even the neighborhood level, working with neighborhood associations and the like. So it is inappropriate, in my opinion, for someone who is not a resident of Escambia County to help decide or to vote on where and how we spend Escambia County public dollars. It's a simple principle in my mind. There's a reason why Gulf Breeze residents don't vote for the mayor of Pensacola or the county commission seats that you guys are sitting in this evening. So I would like to see that language remain the same so that we can be sure that the people voting on our public dollars here in Escambia County are residents and stakeholders of Escambia County. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And the final speaker for the evening, Mr. Scott Booth.
Again, I want to appreciate the opportunity to come before you all this evening and kind of have a chance to sort of maybe kind of bring up a little bit of brief history of the changes here. As the dedicated staff person for both Florida West and the designated staff person for PEDC, I was involved in the entire process. We had several committee meetings that were noticed open to the public. We brought that information as a recommendation to the PEDC board. The PEDC board discussed this issue in open public meetings. They voted unanimously to support the legislative changes that were then recommended to both Escambia County with a 4-1 vote, and then also to the city of Pensacola as well, with a unanimous vote to support the legislative changes. Kind of going back to some of the reason and the intent of when we looked at this, and it's part of the conversation that may be helpful in your decisions this evening as well. When we looked at the residency issue to begin with, We also looked at the other appointing bodies and what their rules and regulations are, or at least their ability to influence who is appointed to the board. The city of Century has its own policies on how they appoint people, which we fully expect is going to be outlined as presented. The city of Pensacola has its outlines and policies and procedures on how they appoint. And then also Escambia County has its own policies and procedures on how they appoint members. So unless their policies were to change, the only two potential opportunities for potential non-residents would probably actually rest with the Florida West Board, which is also the language presented. So out of the 9 members, 7 of those are appointed by elected official bodies within Escambia County that have oversight of how they appoint anybody to any board that they so choose. The second part, I think, is again going back to the intent as it relates to the change between the Chamber of Commerce and Florida West. What we wanted to do is follow the same relationship. Back when the original language was set up, the PEDC actually was housed underneath the Chamber of Commerce. We had a contract with the Chamber of Commerce. Once PEDC was moved out, those contracts, agreements, and oversight has actually shifted to Florida West. We wanted to actually maintain the history and the intent of the original language, and that's basically why we made that recommended change as well. Going back to some of the things that were being brought up this evening, I'll touch on real quick. You know, we always talk about the competitive-based economic development as some of the concerns and issues that the community has. Well, the economic developments of PEDC and Florida West go well beyond that. You can look at the competitive-based projects. Everything from expansions with International Paper, bringing in the McDavid Mill, working with Ascend Performance Material. I would say the majority of the companies that are located in the Ellison Industrial Park, obviously Navy Federal that we mentioned, and many other projects that have been worked over the years with PEDC and the Economic Development Agency in a competitive nature have generated tremendous payroll and benefit to this community, despite some of the opinions of others. That process does work. It's worked for the Southern Automotive Corridor. It's worked for a lot of other southern states, and we support that continued mission. We also run and manage a small business incubator. We are supporting small businesses in the community and everything that we do. We also have workforce development initiatives. And most importantly, we have existing industry support. All of that's handled by the oversight of PEDC. So the things that we work on, the programmable work, the strategic plans that we create, go well beyond just some of the items that are mentioned. And I want to make sure that we want to continue that, and we always look for that influence from those board members and those policy folks that set our budgets and support the things that we do. Be happy to answer any questions that y'all may have. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. And before I close public comment, I just want to offer it one more time up to the floor. Does anybody else want to provide their input on this proposed legislation? All right, we're going to close out of the public input session. Unless Mr. Jonathan, would you like to speak? All right. We'll go into to final comments and discussion on this panel. Do we on this panel have anything they'd like to say? Representative Hill?
First of all, let me apologize, Mr. Chairman and Representative Andrade, and to the citizens here. I went to the wrong location, the WSRE studios where we were last time, so I apologize for that. And if what I'm about to say we have already been repeated, please, or said, please accept my apologies for that. I want to begin by saying that I oppose this piece of legislation that is before us, and for several reasons. As I'm reading the changes that were proposed and made in paragraph 1 to 4, it looks like what was added is something called workforce development, which I think is a great expansion of the responsibilities of this PEDC. Workforce development includes education, job training. I think that goes outside of the scope of what was originally intended by this committee. That was just one of my concerns. And then I see where a qualified collector was removed as one of the requirements for being on the board. I didn't know why that was removed. And then, of course, there's the idea that this has to have a principal business located in Escambia County. My concern with that is, and I heard one or two others mention it, is that there are several businesses owned here in Escambia County, and the owners do not live in Escambia County. So that might be opening up a can of worms. I think that is too broadly defined. I know, for an example, it was recently built on Airport Boulevard, an assisted living facility. I know the gentleman who owns that. He lives in Colorado. I also know there are other assisted living facilities here in Escambia County in Pensacola. I know the gentleman who owns that, he lives in Miami. I don't think the intent would be for anyone in Escambia County to have either one of those owners to be able to come here, be on the board, and make decisions for us. But as you read this legislation, it would actually allow it to do that. Also, another change was how members would be appointed to this board. Previously, the appointments were made by elected officials, or they would be, let me say it differently, the appointees would be elected officials, either from the county or the city council. Now it can be just citizens that the board itself, or even that Florida West elects or appoints to be on this board. Now we have unaccountable, unelected people on this board who would be making economic decisions for its citizens. I think it's more important that we have elected officials who are doing that, such that the people will have a voice where if the wrong decision is being made, they can be elected out of office. If you have someone who's not elected, then we don't have that luxury. Also, I see where it's added that 2 years for each term, but it doesn't mention anything about term limits. I think it's important that we have term limits on this board, just like your legislators here have term limits that we serve. Then this is a small point, but it said that commission members, was in there before, could be removed for missing 3 consecutive meetings, and that was removed. I can understand that sometimes you have to have valid reasons for missing a meeting, but I think that members of this should be engaged, they should be elected, and if you do miss, I'd like to see that put back in. If you do miss 3 meetings without a valid excuse, then you should be removed from the board. So for all these reasons that I just mentioned here, I'll be voting no on this piece of legislation.
Thank you very much for your input tonight, Representative Phil. For me, myself, I think this is about big government versus small government. When I was elected and when I was campaigning, I said that I was running on from a small government perspective, and that the government closest to the people knows best. So when I talk about preemption, which is discussed all the time in Tallahassee, you have to apply a test before you decide whether or not preemption is a valid decision in that circumstance. You have to decide whether or not the decision of a local government violates a fundamental constitutional right, and you have to determine whether or not that local government is expanding the size and scope of its authority beyond what should be allowable in that context. This request by the City Council and the County Commission of Pensacola and Escambia County does neither of those things. It simply asks us to change and correct and realign how they operate. I do not believe it is big state government's responsibility to tell Escambia County and the City of Pensacola how to operate. And for those reasons, I will be supporting this bill, and I will be happy to run this bill in the floor house. And at this time, I'd like to cede the chairmanship back to Senator Broxton.
Thank you, Representative. And tonight, this really comes down to one question. Can we trust the people of these districts that they elected qualified people to make decisions? Was there proper and public testimony given? Was there proper notice? And was there a vote taken? Our decision should be very simple. Do we trust the governments below us to do what the people's called them to do? Frankly, I do. And for that reason, I'm going to vote yes tonight.
I'd like to move for a vote.
I second it. All those in favor say yay.
Yay.
Yay. Those opposed?
No.
Show the record that we had a 2-to-1 vote. Thank you for being here tonight, and have a good evening.